glittering, you know, it couldn't have looked more beautiful. It was a really great day.
Amazing. Well, obviously then a lot of Britain's best of pomp and pageantry on display there, Richard. Anything that stuck out to you as a favourite thing?
I love these state visits, you know, it really is great. I mean, as a social diarist, the things that I tend to notice are the sort of oddities or the things that amuse me. And I love to see Claudia Schiffer there, you know, great German-born
she looked fantastic.
Supermodel who is now Lady Vaughan, because she's married to the filmmaker Sir Matthew Vaughan. Well, she was seated opposite Prince William, who did used to have a poster of her on his wall, I think at Eton College. It was when, I think she was one of maybe of 3 of the supermodels.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was Christy Turlington and Cindy Crawford.
Cindy Crawford and Claudia Schiffer. So I think Prince William definitely will have enjoyed the view
or he may have been cringing a little bit, thinking, because she knows that he's, you know, it's quite famous that she was a poster on his wall.
Yeah.
Well, she was sat next to Sir Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, who looked like the cat that had got the cream. And I think she was definitely, aside from the Princess of Wales, the second best dressed woman there. She was wearing this magnificent kind of almost medieval looking embroidered gown, and she looked absolutely fantastic.
And the other thing that made me chuckle was, it's become a bit of a tradition, but there's a sort of cocktail mixed especially for these state visits. And the cocktail they chose this time was based on cherry brandy. Now, for people who sort of know their royal history, cherry brandy has how can I say, quite unfortunate associations for King Charles. So when he was a lad at Gordonston boarding school, he went on a sailing trip with some of the older boys, and they sailed off, and when they got to Stornoway, they went to a hotel, and I think he wanted to sort of, you know, show that he was one of the lads, and at the bar of this hotel, he ordered a drink. They asked him, what would you like? He'd never really had any alcohol other than a cherry brandy, I think on a hunting trip with his grandma,
I mean,
the Queen Mother.
Horrible.
So he ordered a cherry brandy. But unfortunately, at that very moment, a journalist walked into the bar, overheard him, and it became a bit of a scandal. The hotel was almost closed down. The Royal Protection Officer who was with Charles lost his job.
Because he was underage, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was only 14, you see.
Oh, my word.
And so Charles later wrote him a letter of apology, and he was so embarrassed that this guy had lost his job.
I did not know this story.
It's good fun, but I don't know whether the King would have drunk this cherry brandy cocktail last night, or probably stuck to his favoured martini.
Yes,
I
suspect that might be still triggering for the King.
Well, you know, so there's the whole thing about the palace mixologist is actually something that was introduced by King, so it's new to his reign, and they always theme the cocktail to the state
visit.
Well,
it's a great idea, isn't it?
So this one was, they wanted to imitate a Black Forest Gatto.
Nice.
So it had kind of elements of, like, say, cherries, the cherry brandy, and also chocolate in it, which sounds quite sickly to me, but I think went down quite well.
Oh, I love Black Forest Gatto. As a boy, we'd go out for meals, you know, for birthdays or something, and it was always the Black Forest Gatto you'd have as
you're showing your age now, Richard. That's a very peak 70s dessert.
Wasn't it? Along with prawn cocktails and chicken Kiev. And they did things like yesterday. They had this is where Buckingham Palace and the Royal Household are so good at these things, that they chose the red wine, and it was made in the year, or bottled in the year 1995, which was the year that the German president and his wife got married, and they're celebrating their 30th anniversary this year.
That's so lovely.
So it's little touches like that. They really think about this, and I think that's what makes them so special.
Oh, well, that's beautiful. Claudia Schiffer looked wonderful. The actual hall looked incredible. But as is so often the case, all eyes were on the Princess of Wales, looking resplendent in her beautiful outfit. But we always love to know, did you spot any hidden diplomatic meaning in any of what she was wearing?
Oh, lots. And I spent, to make you laugh, I spent all yesterday creating this carefully crafted piece for the Daily Mail today about all the intricacies of the state banquet. And then the Princess of Wales walked out, and I just basically drew a mental red pen through everything I'd written about diplomatic niceties all day, because there was only one story that was going to make the front pages. She looked spectacular. Obviously her pale blue Jenny Packham dress was amazing, which has this lovely little cape floating from the shoulders, the evening capes, which she started to do quite a lot. And that would have been beautiful in itself, but it was the tiara. And as I got the message on my phone, to tell me what tiara she was going to be wearing. It was Queen Victoria's Oriental Circlet tiara, which is very rarely seen in recent years.
I have to say it's the biggest tiara I've ever seen her wear.
And the fact it's so big and that she wore it rather than it wore her, I think tells you all you need to know. It was spectacular.
I love, you're looking at something that was on the head of Queen Victoria. So like it's the history, especially for a little Australian from the young colonies. It's like it blows your mind. The history.
It was designed and commissioned by Prince Albert from Garrard's. I think it contains 2,600 diamonds and was originally made with opals. But then Princess Alexandra, or become Queen Alexandra, her daughter-in-law, thought opals were unlucky and she changed them to rubies. So Queen Victoria didn't wear it in her widowhood, but she made sure it was a possession of the crown that would be worn by future queens. They all wore it quite a lot. Queen Mother loved this tiara and she wore it an awful lot and loved it so much. Even after her husband died, she decided to keep it for herself. And I remember there was a kind of legendary quote by Queen Elizabeth saying, "Oh, Mummy will give the jewels back one day," even though she was meant to be the one that was as a future queen that was meant to be wearing it. But she then did wear it once after her mother died in 2006, but only once, and we haven't seen it in public since then.
Amazing.
And this is what I love, that in this kind of new reign, that Queen Camilla has kind of almost led the way, starting to open up the royal jewel box, and other royal ladies, taking her lead and starting to wear things we haven't seen before, which for royal watchers is fantastic.
Love that.
And I do think there's something in the fact that Catherine is the first non-queen to wear this tiara. I do think that says something about her stature now, that she was allowed to wear it.
Oh, and of course, actually, the point I meant to make was that because it was designed and commissioned by Prince Albert, who of course was German born. So this is where normally we look for maybe a design in a dress, but this is where the diplomatic tribute was paid, that there was a Germanic link in the tiara to the people that they were guesting.
And given the displays of sort of like affection that we've seen between the King and the German president, it feels like all the diplomatic moves have paid off.
Oh, 100%. I mean, these things normally go pretty swimmingly because they leave nothing to chance. But you could really tell the warmth between the King and the German president yesterday. And there was a really funny moment as I was watching the speeches. And, royal jokes are not necessarily real world jokes, shall we say.
What are you saying, Rebecca?
There's a lots of guffawing.
Are you casting aspersions?
They might not get the same reaction down the Dog and Duck on a Friday night, shall we say.
Live at the Apollo.
But the King made a kind of long joke about how, the German industry, they were renowned for their cars and their automobiles. Because obviously we have important tie-ups between the UK. We have manufacturing plants for German vehicles in the UK. It was all about that. But he said, I know we bow to the Germans in their precision, but I think you learnt today that sometimes simpler modes of transport are equally as good as you enjoyed our horse-drawn carriage ride. The German president thought this was hilarious. He was cracking up.
My sides are not in danger of splitting. I don't know about you.
Maybe it was one of those you had to be there moment, Joe.
Different nations do have different senses of humour.
And actually, a lot of both of their speeches were about the difference in the British and the Germans, and how maybe we don't share the same sense of humour, and that people sometimes might think that the Germans don't have as much of a sense of humour as we do. There was a lot of gentle teasing, so it went down very well. There was a lot of bonhomie.
Oh. We mentioned Catherine's stunning dress from Jenny Packham. The link to that is in the description below if you want to splash out this season. I think it's only a few £1,000s. But we've also put some links to high street alternatives that are just as sparkly and gorgeous. And I believe you met some Palace fans last night, Rebecca.
Actually, when I was on my way to Windsor Castle to cover the state visit, I was being held back from crossing over the crossing. And fortuitously, two ladies suddenly went, "Oh, oh my God, we watch Palace Confidential every week. So I wanted to say a big hello to the Merry Wives of Windsor that I met down there. And thank you for saying hello. And if you ever see me on any other royal engagements, make sure you do say hello, because it's always really nice to hear from the people.
Get an autograph and,
No, well,
a selfie.
not quite.
She's a big star, our Rebecca.
Not quite at that stage, but it's so nice, because it does feel like a real sense of community.
It's lovely,
and that people take the time to say hello. So thank you very much.
Love that. Oh, well, a question for our audience now. We know that we have quite a few German viewers, so what did you make of the state visit over there in Germany? Let us know in the comments below. Dankeschön. Thank you in advance. Now, to celebrate Germany's first state visit in 27 years, we flipped the occasion on its head and compiled a montage of the British royal family visiting Germany, so stick around to the end of the episode for that. And, well, it's already been a really busy week for the Princess of Wales, because as well as playing a key role in that state visit, she visited the children's mental health charity Anna Freud last Thursday. Now, Rebecca, we were filming Palace Confidential during that engagement, so we weren't able to talk about it, but there was one really sweet moment, wasn't there, captured between Catherine and 8-month-old Judah.
It was a proper mum moment, wasn't it? So she was there talking about the prioritisation of children's mental health, and also about the importance of having fathers' voices in this whole debate. And she was chatting to Judah's father, and Judah did what 2-year-old children do, and he was teething, and he kind of reached out, grabbed her finger, and she kind of happily left it there, and then he just stuck it in his mouth, because that's what they do, and had a good old chew. And she was like, "Oh, you're a lively one," and as I say, didn't even raise an eyebrow to it. And so I think you just see her in her best environment when she's with children.
But don't you love that? For the rest of his life now, that kid will be showing that video at every opportunity, won't he?
No, I think his parents were absolutely delighted. And actually, his dad made a point of saying to her, "Thank you for listening to fathers' voices, because sometimes we don't feel that they're heard." So, I think it was a pretty fantastic engagement.
Indeed, yes. Well, discussing children's mental health is relatively safe ground compared to what Catherine has been discussing recently. She received criticism after she shared a charity's message about drug addiction, and some of that criticism even came from the Mail's Peter Hitchens, one of the writers here. Now, Richard, you, however, have been defending the Princess in your Mail Plus column.
Yes, it's Peter Hitchens and others have been criticising Catherine for the point she made about addiction. Basically, she was saying that she wanted to try to get rid of the stigma associated with addiction to drugs, alcohol, gambling, because that's often part of the problem, is people don't want to talk about it. And also she made the point, which is controversial, that addiction is a sort of disease and should be treated as such. It's not necessarily a choice. Now, this has really enraged people like my fellow columnist Peter Hitchens, who very much disagrees. He thinks, it's a choice, it's drug use is against the law, and should really be cracked down on. But I think Catherine wasn't trying to be particularly controversial. What she was saying is, you've got to have great sympathy for addicts, but also that people do seem to have a biological predisposition towards addiction in the same way they might have to other things. And that does seem to have been established by medical research, that some people are more prone to it than others. So now that doesn't take away their element of choice. It doesn't mean they can't fight it. But charities like the Ford Trust that she's involved in, what they do is try and help people conquer their addictions. It's not saying, oh, you can't do anything about it. Quite the opposite. They're saying, we can help them. So I think it's an interesting debate.
Yeah.
But to me, what it shows is, my goodness, here's Catherine being criticised for being controversial. Well, all the criticism in the past has been she's too bland. She chooses subjects like early years child development because it's inoffensive. And as soon as she says something a little bit controversial, she gets criticised. So I think hopefully my column's a bit of a counterpoint to that.
You haven't fallen out with Peter Hitchens, have you?
No, he's someone who loves a good debate, as
exactly.
Anyone who's seen his podcast with Sarah Vine will know.
Indeed. Well, if you do want to read Richard's full Mail Plus column, we'll put a link to that in the description below. Now, like I said before, Catherine's been a busy bee this week. On top of various engagements and the state visit, preparations are underway for her annual Together at Christmas Carol concert at Westminster Abbey. Rebecca, I know you'll be on that list. What can we expect from that event?
Yeah, it's now. I think it's in its 5th year now. It's become a real hardy annual of the royal calendar, which is fantastic because the first year they did it was kind of testing the waters. And do you remember COVID? And let's try and have spread a little bit of joy in those COVID years. Let's see how it goes. And now people, it's not just a highlight of the royal calendar; it's a highlight of the Christmas television schedules as well.
Sure. Yeah.
So. 1,600 people at Westminster Abbey, and I'm lucky enough I'm going to be there tomorrow as well. We've got, star turns aplenty, readings by the likes of Kate Winslet, musical interludes by the brilliant Hannah Waddingham. Prince William's going to be giving a reading. But the actual stars of the show are going to be the unsung community heroes that are in the audience, and they've scoured the land through the Lord Lieutenants, who are the representatives of the royal family in various counties around the country, and said, you can nominate people, who really deserve a pat on the back for, the community initiatives they're doing. So although we're going to see a lot of famous, they're the real stars of the show. Although I should add, and it hasn't been confirmed yet, that we're obviously very much hoping that William and Catherine will bring their 3 children.
I was going to ask, because I think that's a lot of people will want to see the children.
They usually do, don't they?
They do, yes, one of those. Well, the reason why they don't like to confirm it is because, of course, as I am now, there are seasonal sniffles going around.
Yeah.
We're all battling them at the moment. Sorry for my voice this week. So you never know the day, and obviously, they have school nativity productions and things like that, but we are hopeful they're all 3 going to be there.
Well,
and
I very much hope
chance to see them all.
I hope your sniffles don't put you out of the action.
No, I'm through the worst of it now.
You can soldier on.
Yeah.
Pack it a day, nurse.
Yeah, exactly.
Richard, it is impressive, isn't it, how quickly it's become just part of the national calendar.
Yeah, and I think that's partly a reflection on the status that Catherine has, that people want to be associated with it. I think they've enjoyed it in the past, and there've been those lovely touches that she's introduced, like she asked Lady Gabriella Windsor to help with the music last year, and I think this year we have performers from the charity that was co-founded by the Duchess of Kent, I think, don't we?
Future Talent, yeah.
Yeah, Future Talent. So, she's been keen to try and draw in all the different members of the royal family. We'll see them there. So it's a lovely event, and I enjoyed watching it. It's usually broadcast on Christmas Eve in Britain.
Yes, it is, yeah.
It'll be lovely. Well, pictures of the royals all dressed up for the carol service will roll in on Friday night, so we'll be filming a very special fashion episode of Palace Confidential next week, so make sure you're subscribed to this channel because you won't want to miss that. I can't tell you quite yet, but I will have some very exciting guests joining me in the studio. Right, so moving on now to a more serious topic. King Charles has found himself once again fighting for the future of the monarchy after the Public Accounts Committee launched an inquiry into every Crown estate property as a reaction to the former Prince Andrew paying a so-called peppercorn rent at Royal Lodge. Rebecca, you might need to explain this to me like I'm 5 years old. What's going on?
The good news is it is actually quite straightforward, but has of course been prompted by the huge row we've seen recently over Prince Andrew's, no I shouldn't say it, I keep on getting this in my head, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's living arrangements, and the fact that after paying a significant sum, multi-million pounds up front, he has been living on a peppercorn rent at Royal Lodge. And this really stuck in people's gullets, and the Public Accounts Committee is a committee within our Houses of Parliament, the House of Commons, who are entitled to, and it is their job to scrutinise public finances. And they have decided, and I think probably rightly in some people's opinion, that they want to scrutinise the Crown Estate, which is this independent body that oversees a £15 billion property portfolio across the UK. Some of it is used to fund the royal family, but much of it also goes to the Treasury for the public. But they have a responsibility to make sure that they get the best return on their investment. And they're concerned that these kind of sweetheart deals on royal properties, as some people see them, are not offering best value for money for taxpayers, and they've decided to investigate. Now, most of the quizzing will be done of people who work for the Crown Estate, but we could see royal officials asked to give evidence. Some people have even said maybe we'll see members of the royal family. I think that's very, very unlikely because they have people speaking on their behalf. But, the public Accounts Committee show no fear or favour when it comes to their line of questioning. So I think it will be tough times.
I think it seems to be the making of something that has huge potential for awkward conversations, Richard. Do you think it's a necessary investigation, or do you think it could have been avoided?
100% could have been avoided. I mean, I blame Andrew for this. You know, it's his behaviour that caused it all. It's his, reluctance, refusal to move out of Royal Lodge when that became untenable. And also that the King should have acted sooner.
But, I mean, to play devil's advocate, perhaps there's just a lot of information that the public should be aware of, whether or not Andrew's behaviour.
True, but if you remember the timeline a bit, I remember sitting here, and after there was the initial statement from the King that it was actually from Andrew, who was Prince Andrew at that time, had agreed to not use his titles. You know, I remember sitting here saying that's not enough. And then politicians started saying the same. And that really got a sort of snowball effect. And from that, we've got very damaging things happening now and potentially worrying for the monarchy, I think. Yeah,
well, the snowball has started rolling down the hill, hasn't it? Because there was an article in the Mail on Sunday, Rebecca, about the peppercorn rent that Prince Edward pays for Bagshot Park, Surrey. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's important to stress. The funny thing is, none of this is new. Like, all of it has been in the public domain at some point. But I think, you know, we, the media, politicians and the British people have largely forgotten about it. And obviously the whole Andrew situation has shone a spotlight on it. So Edward and Sophie, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, live in Bagshot Park, which is a massive 120-room mansion in Surrey, not far from Windsor Castle. Very much like Andrew, they've paid significant millions of pounds, almost up front over the years, to do up the property, which obviously has saved the public purse money from having to pay for it themselves. And that's kind of been in lieu of the rent. But of course, there was an investigation by the Times, which has been picked up on by the Mail on Sunday, pointing this out. And again, that raises question marks over whether this is the right way to conduct this sort of business. The Crown Estate will say, look, these are very difficult properties to rent out. They're often within security cordons, so we can't just rent it out to another person. There are big considerations here, and they always argue that they do it as market rate. But of course, we don't know what that figure is because it's deemed commercially sensitive, which adds to the sense of kind of mystery and frustration about it from the public point of view.
Yeah, and as you say, it's something that's always been in the public domain, but it just takes that one thing like the Andrew story to grip the agenda and make it something that everyone's focused on. So do you think that there'll be more that comes out of this inquiry along the same kind of lines, more peppercorn rents?
That's difficult to predict. I mean, I double-checked with the Crown Estate this week, and they have been open that there are 5 properties that this affects, and they've talked about it already in documentation that they've submitted to the PAC. Interesting one that people are focused on a little bit is Princess Alexandra, who's a very elderly but much loved and respected member of the royal family. She obviously doesn't do much in public anymore, but she has a place in Richmond that it has emerged that she only pays £225 a month rent for. And again, we don't know the full details of her lease. Maybe she has paid, again, many millions of pounds up front. But I think this is the kind of thing that they want to get to the bottom of.
Do you think the royal family's in trouble with this, Richard?
Well, first of all, I should say, I don't think that there's anything wrong with these arrangements whatsoever. I mean, Princess Alexandra, for example, was given a sort of grace and favour property to live at because she devoted her life to public service. She was helping her cousin, the Queen, and because of that had somewhere to live. So I can't see anything wrong with that. But yes, I think the monarchy does have some problems. I mean, to explain this to our overseas viewers, perhaps, we have a left-wing government, a socialist government, that is very unpopular already. And so what they've started doing is trying to appeal to people on the left. Lots of them, they're Republicans, they don't like the monarchy.
Well, you can imagine a lot of people, smelling the blood and wanting this to damage the monarchy.
So as soon as you had a scandal like the Prince Andrew, they've been leaping on it. They want to take advantage. And now the government's vulnerable to that. So it is an issue. And then as well, actually, this week we've had a sort of very important documentary on BBC One, our main channel, presented by David Dimble, who was always the voice of royal occasions,
Yes.
and his father before him, and his brother is a close friend of the king. And his programme is called "What's the Point of the Monarchy?" And it's really edgy, actually. It basically seems to be arguing that there isn't any point anymore.
Well, and there's a lot of criticism about the King's tax affairs.
Yeah. And so, you've got people really pushing an agenda at the moment, and I think there is a danger there, and the royal family, I think, or certainly I hope, are aware of that.
And just to add to that, I think you use the right phrase, Joe, snowball. These things have a habit of snowballing, and you don't know where they're going to go. And the one thing the royal family is acutely aware of is discussion of their finances are never comfortable, because we live in a society where there are some people who are considerably richer than others, and and that's the way it's always been. But they don't really want a massive public discussion of it.
Do you think there might be? Do you remember? Was it 1992 when the Queen started paying more tax, and that seemed to sort of like shut down that momentum?
She hadn't paid tax up until that. Full stop. Yeah, no, you're right. And she did actually voluntarily agree to pay certain amounts of tax on certain amounts of her wealth.
I wonder if there'll be something where they come out on the offensive and just get in front of it and make some sort of demonstrative gesture in that way. I don't know.
They could do, but the King could agree to pay more tax on certain aspects, as other members of the royal family, I suppose, could make their tax returns more public, but that's just not something we tend to do in this country.
But these critics will never be satisfied anyway. On the left, you throw them a bit of meat, they'll just want another, they'll come back for more, so it's a dangerous route to go down.
It's worth highlighting as well that the Prince and Princess of Wales are being dragged into this because Forest Lodge is a Crown estate property. But very interestingly, it's been made clear already that they've been on quite on the front foot about this and said ours is a 20-year lease, because they said Forest Lodge is going to be their forever home, but obviously 20 years will take them to their 60s when the children have left home, so who knows what situation they're going to be in. And interesting, they made clear that lease is not one that automatically goes to their children. So I think they've and that again they're paying a very market rate on it. There's no question of money being put up front in lieu of rent.
No peppercorns.
Peppercorns there. No peppercorns, no grinders,
Such a strange phrase.
They're absolutely paying a yearly market rent on it. So, it's important to stress that it's not always looking very murky. There are some kind of very straight examples of how these kind of situations will work.
Well, the news on that front keeps coming because speaking of royal properties, or what we've taken to calling Game of Homes, see what we did there, news broke this week that Andrew is set to lose his £500,000 of compensation back for being booted out of Royal Lodge because an inspection in November found it to be dilapidated. Rebecca, what are the extent of the repairs? Because if it's swallowing that compensation, that would suggest quite a lot of work needs doing.
Well, the suggestion is that the entire £500,000 that he could have got back after, for having to leave his lease early could be swallowed up by the repairs. The truth is we don't entirely know yet because he's still living there and they're trying to assess it while he's there.
Change the radiator.
They almost probably need him to move out before they can have the surveyors go around and have a proper look. I think that would also be if it was to be swallowed up, it would be quite a happy solution because no one, the King, not the Crown Estate or anyone, wants to see public money being paid back to Andrew because that would not be a good look. So I can imagine they'll be kind of constantly going, surely we can knock off a few more pounds here or something. But yeah, so it looks like hopefully he won't be in line for any public money.
I mean, he's possibly panicking or fuming about this, wouldn't you say, Richard? Because we don't know how Andrew will go forward earning money, so he needs that money.
Well, I think all of us would miss £500,000,
wouldn't we? I've never seen it to miss it. So
and remember that in the future he is going to be dependent on the King's generosity. He's going to be living at the King's private estate, Sandringham, and given an allowance by his brother, the King. So, it'd be nice for him, I guess, to have a bit of his own pocket money.
Yeah, imagine that. It's really humiliating, isn't it, being given an allowance by your big brother?
Yeah, but we don't know where he's getting his other sources of income from, and it sounds like he may have no choice.
Well, there's been a lot of rumours flying around as well this week about Charles's 1-hour meeting with the King of Bahrain, which happened on the 11th of November. That was less than a fortnight after Andrew was stripped of his royal titles and home. Now, some conspiracy theorists have suggested that this meeting may have been used to discuss Andrew's future, potentially in Bahrain, where he's previously expressed interest in relocating to. Now, meanwhile, courtiers have insisted it was a private meeting between two friends, as one would expect them to do. Who do you believe, Rebecca?
I'm slightly on the fence on this, because it is true the King Charles and the King of Bahrain are old friends. King of Bahrain was great friends with Queen Elizabeth as well, big supporters of things like the Royal Windsor Horse Show. But the one thing I do know is that monarchs don't tend to get helicopters in the middle of a busy working day and go and see a friend. You know, the mountain tends to come to man, if not the other way around. So I find it really quite intriguing that he took a helicopter flight to spend an hour in the Cotswolds with the King of Bahrain and then come back to Windsor when he had a function in the evening. What I can't say is what that tells us, but that definitely gets my spider senses tingling.
And remember, we know that the King has taken an interest in Andrew's financial future before, because he sent courtiers to attend a meeting with some businessmen who were interested in some sort of deal with Andrew. So it's clearly something he's thought about.
And do you think, Richard, it is just a coincidence that, unlike the UK, Bahrain doesn't have an extradition agreement with the US, where Andrew has failed to respond to requests to testify to Congress about his links with Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, certainly he hasn't been on any flights visiting America, has he, since all this broke? Yeah, so maybe that would be convenient. There's no sign that Andrew wants to travel to America to act as a witness. But certainly being somewhere where he'll never be ordered to leave could be appealing.
Indeed. Well, we have some more shocking news about Andrew coming up. Why does that shocking news just keep on coming with Andrew? And some jaw-dropping Harry and Meghan stories. But first, we really need to discuss your comments. On last week's episode of Palace Confidential, we spoke about Harry's speech at the real estate conference in Ontario, Canada. Well, that event took place on Monday, but wouldn't you know it, luckily for us, we had a spy on the inside to tell us all about it. Sylvia Kirkwood wrote to us and said, "I attended the Ontario Real Estate Conference on Monday, and Prince Harry was the last speaker at 3:30 to 4 p.m. We were told before he came on stage that there were no photographs and no videos, and if we are caught with our phones, they would be taken away. He was very nervous when he came out. The audience was very kind to him and actually gave him a standing ovation. Believe it or not, he spoke about service, a lot of word salad," she says, with lots of exclamation marks, and turning around and asking the interviewer questions. He apologised for not wearing a Blue Jay cap, and they asked him what his favourite mundane thing was, and he said to walk his dog. Not much said, and he was off today to see veterans at Sunnybrook Hospital. Well, thank you for that extraordinary insight, Sylvia. Now, Rebecca, I need to know, is it normal for audiences to be told not to take pictures or video royals making public speeches?
Not really, I have to say. I mean, 10, 20, 30 years ago, especially in Queen Elizabeth's time, that it was very much disencouraged. And in fact, you know, often at royal events, people, and actually still are, asked to hand their phones in. They're a lot more relaxed about it now because they understand, I think, we can't really fight the inevitable. It'll end up on social media somewhere. It's interesting, I read a few other accounts, and how amazing it is that the Palace Confidential viewer was there.
We've got
so thank
sources
you very much.
everywhere.
Thank you very much for sending that in. But I read a couple of accounts of people there who, again, are slightly surprised that it really was a diktat that they could not use their phone, but they were offered, I saw one gentleman say he was offered the chance to have some photographs of Prince Harry afterwards, you know, for his memories, as long as they weren't put on social media. And apparently Harry also said that he often gets approached by people on the beach when he walks his dog and asks if he can take photographs, and people can take photographs, and he says no. But you know, some people say, oh, we thought he was quite endearing and great, and others say, we kind of wondered what the point of it was.
What did you make of it all, Richard?
Well, the point of it was very clear. It was to make money.
Yeah.
He has no particular interest in real estate in Canada.
But I think you made the point to me before we came in here. It didn't seem the most premium event. The tickets weren't that expensive. So how much could he have been being paid?
Yeah, I was quite surprised because the tickets weren't that expensive and there weren't that many people there, and it wasn't a bank or a financial company that would have a fortune to spend. So you can probably get him for less than you think.
Maybe.
If you want Harry to talk at your party, or you can get him for a
Come on, your
50p
talk show.
and a bunch of grapes.
We'll talk about that more later. And as we always say, we are so thankful to have such a global audience. So we were really pleased to hear from Christina, who said, "Hello, this is Christina from the Czech Republic. I have a question about Meghan and Harry. Is it likely that they will ever attend the Christmas at Sandringham again?" I'm guessing you have a view, Richard.
Oh gosh, I mean, come on, Christmas, is a time for family to relax and enjoy themselves, and I can't imagine it'd be very relaxing to have Harry and Meghan there after all they've said.
Well, he's never been that what's the word, effusive about Sandringham Christmases, has
no,
he?
he's in his memoirs. He's complained about the rooms that he was given and that sort of thing. So I think it is very unlikely, but I can't predict the future. So who knows?
Who knows? We'll watch this space. Now stick around for more Christmas-related news on Harry and Meghan later on in the show. There's also been a bit of confusion about Andrew's so-called ironclad lease. Here is Pam D, who said, "Look to you for all my royal news." Well, thank you very much. Now, you all spoke often about Andrew's ironclad lease, so how did they finally get Andrew out? It's a pretty good question. Rebecca, can you clear things up?
I think what it boils down to is the fact that things have got so bad publicly, even Andrew realised that he had to go. You're right, it is a cast iron lease and he would have had every right to dig his heels in and stay in, but the King really decided to play hardball in the face of some pretty damaging headlines, and Andrew finally saw sense basically. But I do think it was a case of, we are going to find a way to do this, and you either do it and try and come out with a bit of dignity, I'm not sure what dignity he's got, but, or we do it for you, basically.
Indeed. Well, as previously mentioned, Richard's latest episode of Reading the Royals came out on Tuesday. It's all about Princess Markle of Kent, otherwise known as Princess Pushy. That's not a name we mention on the show very much, so Partly Cloudy has asked, "Richard, I'm confused. Why are there two Duchess of Kents? Catherine, who died a month or two ago, is Catherine, Duchess of Kent. Her husband was Duke of Kent, Prince Edward. So how does this Mary Christine, Princess Michael of Kent, have the same last name? Can you explain it?"
Yes, I should say there aren't two Duchesses of Kent. So what you had was two brothers who were the sons of Prince George, Duke of Kent. So his son and heir is the current Duke of Kent, he's Prince Edward, and then his brother is Prince Michael, who is Prince Michael of Kent because of their father's title. It's as simple as that. If there was another brother, he'd be, Prince Henry of Kent or whatever. So it's just because of their father's title.
You can understand why people get confused.
Yes, and what makes it more confusing is when you talked about Princess Michael of Kent, people think, hey, is her name Michael?
Yeah, I used to think that when I was a child,
But her name's actually Mary Christine, and then people, they haven't heard of that. Who's she?
Yeah.
But it's just, she takes the title of her husband in the same way that if Prince Harry was stripped of his Sussex title, Meghan would be Princess Henry. Princess Harry.
Yeah.
So it's just that convention of taking the title of your husband.
Indeed.
Which I know the palace think is a far worse option than Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. So
really?
Princess Meghan.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Princess Michael of Kent has truly lived about 10 different lives. She was born in the Czech Republic, grew up in Australia, and her father was an SS officer in the Nazi Party. Not to mention she nearly caused a constitutional crisis when she married Prince Michael. So to hear Richard delve into more shocking detail about Princess Pushy's life, the full Reading the Royals episode will play straight after this, and it's well worth a watch, so enjoy. Now, let's open this part of the show with the worrying news that Meghan Markle's father, Thomas, is apparently fighting for his life in a hospital.
Meghan Markle had posted an alert on her Instagram page, and I thought maybe she's finally embraced humanity. Maybe this is a message to her father. Maybe she is finally going to let bygones be bygones and reunite with the man who raised her, and that before she loved before she met Prince Harry, she truly loved. But my God, I was wrong. Meghan Markle was instead promoting a truly deranged appearance by her husband, Prince Harry, who had decided to go ahead filming this stunt with Stephen Colbert, the left-wing US late-night chat show host. Watch.
So if you was treated like a king for the day, what would you want me to do for you?
Beg for me, probably.
You'd want me to do what? Beg?
Beg. Beg.
Beg?
B-A-K. Beg.
What?
Bake.
Oh, bake!
It's so mortifying on so many levels. But to know that he recorded that while his father-in-law was in hospital, Tom Sykes, it's just a despicable new low.
Hi, Dan. Yeah, it was a weird. I mean, Meghan, as we know, is the queen of terrible timing. Anything that she seems to do seems to come with the most appalling timing, whether it's, from leaving the royal family itself into the teeth of COVID, or anything that she does seems to have this incredible failure to think through the context of what she's acting in. Now, the whole Thomas Markle story is obviously very complicated, right? Lots of us have complicated relationships with our own parents. Now, Thomas Markle would be the first to admit that he made mistakes in the run-up to the wedding, allowing himself to be photographed, cooperating with photographers, all those kinds of things. But the idea that as your father is having intensive care surgery, that this is the message that you put out on social media, I think beyond the just natural kind of sort of human astonishment at this, I think it's actually really challenging for Meghan's whole brand on the very day that she's releasing this Christmas special, saying, people were already saying, why is she saying that your Christmas tree ornaments should honor your family history, when she hasn't spoken to her own father since, we believe, the wedding, or shortly after the wedding? There was obviously the letter after the wedding that was published by the Mail, and has encouraged her husband to completely break his relationship with his whole family. So it seemed a bit rich anyway for Meghan to be talking about how your Christmas tree ornaments can honor your family, when they have gone to great lengths to cut off and be estranged from their family. But then, as you say, when really, if any social media was going to be put out last night by Meghan, maybe a note acknowledging what her father was going through would have been the way to go. Instead, it's this bizarre appearance by Harry on Colbert. I mean, it was, I think, phenomenally ill-judged. And I think that the whole of Harry's performance on that show was very ill-judged. And I'm sure we'll get into that, Dan.
Well, yes, let's get into that now. We will come back to the situation with Thomas Markle. But what Prince Harry did is, I think, make it impossible for Charles, or potentially William, to allow him to remain a prince. Because it was actually deadly serious, even though all of this was cloaked behind jokes. So effectively, he came out and attacked the US president, standing on stage in New York in front of a liberal audience who, Tom, actually quite astonishingly at one point booed him. Watch this.
I heard you elected a king.
That's a fair point.
Now, for folk who aren't in America, Tom, it is worth pointing out that Stephen Colbert is one of the most radioactive left-wing personalities in the mainstream media. So much so that on buying CBS Paramount, David Ellison, the billionaire who has links to the Trump White House, cancelled his show. It was a huge controversy. But in this sketch, which clearly isn't written by Harry, I would argue it's probably written by Colbert himself, they go there and Harry is scripted to say, I'll record a self-tape, I'll fly myself to an audition, settle a baseless lawsuit with the White House, all the things you people in TV do. Colbert replied saying, I didn't do that. And the Prince replied back, maybe that's why you were cancelled. Now, of course, that was all scripted. But the issue is here, Tom, that it's a complete hot potato issue as to whether this lawsuit was baseless, because it is referring to the fact that CBS ended up paying Donald Trump $36 million, for a deceptively edited interview on 60 Minutes with Kamala Harris before the last presidential election. But the idea that we have a member of the British royal family who retains his title, who remains in the line of succession, getting up on stage and literally throwing a grenade into the UK's relationship with our greatest ally, which is strained at the moment, is insane. I mean, I know you've already written a brilliant column about this, which I lapped up every word of earlier for the Royalist Substack blog and for the Daily Beast, where you're European editor at large. Sorry, I obviously should have said earlier, but I've just been so impacted by this Thomas Markle story. But I mean, really, Tom, after this, isn't it time for Charles to take action and not wait until William? I mean, what did you make of it all? I'm gobsmacked, basically.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's pretty clear after that performance on Colbert last night that this arrangement of him being Prince Harry is not really working for anybody. It's not working for him. It's not working for the royal family. It's very confusing. You know, look, people who watch your show, right, Dan, people who watch my show, people who read my Substack, read your Substack, they follow the story closely, right? And they understand that Harry is not a spokesperson for the royal family, that he's effectively being kicked out of the family, etc., etc. The casual observer doesn't understand that, right? The 50 billion people who are getting their news via Facebook or however they're getting it, it's just a news feed coming in. For them, Prince Harry's Prince Harry, right? He's the son of the king. And so it's weird to have a member of the royal family slagging off the president on primetime TV.
Well, isn't it more than weird, Tom? Isn't it actually dangerous? I mean, it completely goes against everything the British royal family is meant to be about. And remember, we've got potential state visits next year to mark the 250th birthday of the US, and this is a huge diplomatic embarrassment. A very quick but personal message from me to you to let you know that the best way you can support Dan Wootton Outspoken is to subscribe to my Substack at www.outspoken.live. Substack is a free speech platform that protects me from big tech cancellation and lawfare. Paid annual or monthly subscribers get an extra hour of content with the Royal Uncancelled After Show available every weekday with no advertising whatsoever. You can also message me direct on there. That's www.outspoken.live.
When Harry and Meghan left the royal family and the Sandringham summit was negotiated, the key takeaway from that whole negotiation with the Queen was their promise to the Queen that they would uphold the values of Her Majesty. That's what they said at the time. It seems to me at its most obvious, at its most fundamental, that upholding her values requires you to keep out of politics, especially to keep out of politics, as you say, with our most important ally at a difficult time. And what I really also thought about that whole sketch yesterday was that I thought actually it kind of started fine, right? Harry turns up, he's goofing around, he's a bit of a plonker, he's a bit of like, whatever, like that's just a personal choice, whether you think that's funny or don't think it's funny. Like there's definitely an argument to say, you know, it was kind of cute or whatever, or it was really unfunny or whatever, right? That's one thing. But what's very interesting is that the moment he starts talking about Trump, the whole atmosphere in the studio changes.
Big
the whole
time.
context of the gag changes. You have these audible boos from, a very highly partisan Democratic crowd in Midtown New York. Like, I just think that Harry, I think, thought that when he read the script that I'm sure was provided for him, I bet he thought, yeah, this makes me look clever. It makes me look woke. It makes me look this and that. But I just don't think that Prince Harry on Colbert should be making gags about what is a very, it's America's defining fear at the moment is on one side that they're plunging into this you know, authoritarian system where Trump is the ruler ruling by fear. And on the other side, that all these people are suffering from Trump derangement syndrome and that this is a very, very toxic, complex subject.
Yeah, and
it's
he
not
went there.
suitable for a punchline.
And he just went there. He just went there saying Trump is acting like he's king. Now, that's something that as a Trump supporter, I completely disagree with, but it's not something that Prince Harry should be wading into at all. I believe he was used by Colbert. I don't think Harry has any nuance when it comes to US politics. I think he's pretty stupid about all of it. But I also think, Tom, we cannot forget, and certainly as a royal watcher, I have not forgotten, that the choice of Stephen Colbert in itself is highly controversial, given that this was the man who led a revolting campaign against his own sister-in-law, someone who you would think Prince Harry would still have a bit of respect for, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, while she was battling cancer, which the world didn't know about, Tom. But you'll remember it was Stephen Colbert who went out there, led with the conspiracy theories, and even had to be legally warned by Rose Hanbury in regards to the untrue rumours that he was perpetuating about this rumoured affair with Prince William. And that all happened, by the way, when Catherine was secretly undergoing treatment. Now, that's the late night show. Harry chooses to go and visit. Incredibly pointed before you even get to the politics.
And what is so fascinating about that, Dan, is that when I was speaking to contacts on Harry's side, they were telling me, and I was saying, why did he do this? Like, he didn't have anything to promote. Like, if anyone should have been on the show yesterday, his wife should have been on the show promoting her, new Netflix show. But Harry didn't have anything to promote. He didn't have anything to advocate for, nothing to say. There was nothing about it. So I was like, why is he doing this? And their argument was, this whole thing of like, well, he's a friend. He's a friend of theirs. It's out of affection for him. And, Harry's free to speak his mind about anything he wants. And I completely agree. I think that to go on Colbert is not a neutral act in itself. To go on Colbert with the history of bad feeling and the history of what has happened between Colbert and Catherine, and by extension William, is a very great provocation, I think, by Harry. I think if Harry were truly living as Harry Wales or Harry Mountbatten Windsor, as Mr. whatever, which is frankly what he should be doing and what anyone with any normal titled person would be doing if they lived in a republic, they would not continue to use their title. I think it'd be fine. And I think that argument would totally hold water and it would be completely credible. But he isn't Harry Wales, is he, Dan? He's
No.
Prince Harry, as we were reminded, 25 times in that skit. He's Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex. And in the American imagination, he still carries the full aura of being a prince. He is, as far as they are concerned, a representative of the monarchy. Now, I'm not saying for everybody, and as I've said before, people who understand and follow the story closely know he's not. But the global audience does not grasp that Harry
and I'm
is
sorry, Tom,
a part
he's
of
in the
Windsor
line of
family business.
succession. I mean, he's in the line of succession. He retains the Duke of Sussex title. His wife continued to use that in her executive producer credit on the With Love Meghan holiday celebration as recently as yesterday. So I think they do still remain part of that institution as much as we might not like that. Now, of course, it's so messy in regards to the Markle family situation, Tom, because Thomas Markle Jr., who is a YouTuber now, Thomas Markle Jr. and Friends is his YouTube channel. And look, he's an outspoken guy. And you know I like outspoken people, okay? But he has now, in his emotion over what his father has gone through, and I think to some consternation from other family members, gone public and blasted Meghan. This is new video from his YouTube account, Tom. Let's watch.
But long story short, all right, I do blame Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle, the shit stain of humanity. Yes, Meghan, and I hope you're watching right now. I hope you're watching, Meghan, because you are the shit stain of fucking humanity. You're a disgrace. And I hope people spit in your face when they see you walking down the street. I hope, they throw human feces at you because of how you really are as a person inside.
Thomas Markle Jr. even went on to describe her as a colostomy bag.
And then we got colostomy bag Meghan. Colostomy bag Meghan. Which has no clueless on life or feelings or anything, right? Except for money.
And look, I know there's a lot of rhetoric and some people won't enjoy that. But Thomas Markle Jr. is speaking from his heart. And I do think he rightly reminded the world how ashamed Meghan should be after everything her father did for her. Watch. But first, as we get older, you notice it. After a cold day, hard workout, even a long week, recovery just isn't as quick as it used to be, right? That bounce back factor matters. And it turns out the secret isn't luck, it's stem cells, your body's built-in repair crew. With age, that system slows down. Fewer cells, weaker signals, slower recovery. That's exactly why Qualia created Qualia Stem Cell. Think of it this way. Your cells are powerful. Qualia Stem Cell helps keep them that way. It's crafted with nature's heavy lifters, sea buckthorn, royal jelly, and more to support your body's natural repair system so you can keep moving, healing, and thriving. You don't have to accept slowing down. This is about supporting better aging by reactivating the systems that help you bounce back. And it's refreshingly simple. You take it just 4 days a month. So if you've ever felt like your body just doesn't bounce back like it used to, whether it's after a tough workout, getting sick, or just the wear and tear of life, this is for you. Qualia Stem Cell was designed to support your body's natural repair systems, helping you heal, recover, and keep going strong. And right now, you can try it for up to 50% off at qualialife.com/Dan. And here's a bonus. Use the code Dan for an additional 15% off your order. So that's QUALIA life.com/Dan. Your body's built to repair itself. Qualia just helps it do it that better. And a big thanks, by the way, to Qualia for sponsoring this episode of Outspoken. But now, back to the show.
And I want it to be known worldwide, that the man who did everything for her and she threw away like a piece of dog shit stuck to the bottom of her shoe, the man is in, I'm taking care of him. He's in really good care right now. And Meghan, you should be ashamed of yourself to show your face in public. You should be fucking ashamed. And I hope people who walk down the street in Montecito on Coast Village Road, where Lucky's, Trayloon, the Coast Village Inn, where Harry probably lives more than he lives at your fucking house, right down the street from the Miramar. Yeah, I hope if you go to those I hope people look at you and point from now on. That's that soulless, evil fucking bitch. Oh, did I say that out loud? Oh, I'm so sorry. Allegedly, in my opinion. You know, whose dad is suffering in intensive care, you know, and she's gallivanting around the world pretending to be somebody when Meghan Markle is her only biggest fan.